Hey everybody, Egnards here once again with part 2 on our Battle for Naboo series, and I'll just remind you that we're not talking about battle strategy here. There are plenty of content creators. There's a ton of resources on Reddit and Discord and the official forums for how to do each battle specifically. That's not our goal. But before I begin, I do once again want to kind of plug the Star Wars Galaxy Hero raid server. You know, these guys super invaluable for raid information. And as with our first video, I did get a lot of help from their input, primarily our own liaison, Belloc, who completely changes the game on helping me to understand the raid and helping me to understand everything that's going on with this raid, because I just don't have room in my brain to process all of the mechanics. So if you're not there, you know, they're putting out great stuff every day. They got awesome infographics. When we did our last video, not all of these are up, and they're adding to them every day. I would 100% check them out. Now, the first time that we talked about Battle for Naboo, we were talking about reclaiming your guild's reward crate, right? So for those of you that don't remember or maybe didn't see it, we were looking at the speeder bike rewards versus the Battle for Naboo rewards. We were kind of going through the team compositions, needed and at different guild levels and different requirement levels and how to get there and what the averages are and what your team should look like. We got a great response. A lot of people were really happy. A lot of people really enjoyed the series. But the one glaring omission obviously was, hey, Egnards, what is our Zeta input like? Like, where do I need to put my Zetas into my characters? Which characters should I Zeta first? What does that look like? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And this is going to be a super quick, super simple video. We're just going to spend a couple of minutes on it. And that same raid comparison sheet that we released with our last video, you'll hopefully right after this is released see a new Zetas tab to kind of help you out with that. One thing I do want to remind you of though is that I have a 12 million GP account. So for me, I have almost every Zeta in the game. And players that are around my level are going to be in a similar position. This video is more focused on players who do not have the same resources that I have and do not have the same resources that really long-term players have. This video is for, number one, the mid-tier players who are wondering, all right, I have all of these characters at G12 or Relic 1 or Relic 3. I have none of their Zetas. Which ones do I absolutely need to get? It's also geared at people that maybe are looking at new teams. So the Gungans specifically are a team that is brand new to the game. We have had plenty of bonus drops. A lot of people are starting to unlock them at 7 stars and waiting for Jar Jar Binks. They want to bring all of their characters up to all of the Zetas, and they're just wondering, well, which order do I do it in order to get maximum effect, right? So that's the purpose here. You're going to see a lot of information on this next slide. And the goal is not to say, hey, don't get this one, don't get this one, and don't get that one. It's instead to say, hey, certain Zetas are super important. Your team literally will not work without it. And other Zetas are a luxury that are going to help your score, but you will at least be able to get by until you have time to get those things. What we're going to look at is basically the core same team compositions, right, that we looked at originally in the first video. And like I said, this will all be available to you in text form if you really hate to hear my voice. So here's what we got. We've broken up every team into different team compositions based on their Zetas. And you will see that our priorities range from mandatory Zetas, so things that you absolutely need in order for the team to function. Highly encouraged Zetas, so Zetas that are going to be really useful to you and you should largely, almost definitely get, but the team will still work without them. Decent utility Zetas are the ones that are kind of in the middle, right? They're going to help you. They're not a priority. You'll definitely notice a score difference without them, but they may not be the first or the second ones that you do on a team. And then we drop down to our luxury Zetas, and those luxury Zetas are the ones that might help your score a little bit. If you've got 200, 300 material just laying around, you might as well do these ones. And then we have our barely worth it Zetas, right? So these are ones that are going to give us just a little hint of help, but probably not going to move the needle very much for your team. There are two other categories here. We have our teams that have our characters who have no Zetas at all, and then we have some Zetas that are just not going to be applicable. So if we look at like Darth Maul's Dancing Shadows, it's not going to be applicable to you if you're not using the Maul Force 3 team. Patent pending, trademark, whatever, I don't know. Shakti's Unity Wins Wars, it's going to give her whatever, it doesn't matter because it's a lead and you're not going to use her lead. Grandmaster Yoda's lead, which is actually one of those ones that very few people do have because of that switch over between when he came out and kind of when the Revans started to jump onto the scene. And then Qui-Gon's lead Zeta, right? These are things that the majority of people are not going to be using and really shouldn't be using, so we don't have to worry about them. What you're going to notice here is that a lot of the Zetas for most of our teams really aren't mandatory. If you're using that Maul Force 3 team, that Dancing Shadows lead is going to be important. It is the vehicle that makes that team work. In the same way, on your Quadmate team, Loyal Bodyguard, Nobility, and Restraint, you really, really need them to make that team work. The Gungans team, this is kind of one of my favorites because the Zetas are all over the place, and it should help people who are in that Zeta crunch kind of determine which characters need them first. It is important to note a couple things with this team. Number one, the team does work as a 4-man without Jar Jar Binks if you have great modding, if you have the Omicron. Okay, so even though I have Jar Jar Binks is listed as mandatory, his Misa Oki Day, you can get by without it in a 4-man squad, right? It does require very, very, very specific, really high-end mods, and that's not something that everybody wants to do. You'll also notice that Gungan Boombadir's Zeta, Grand Army Specialist, is listed as barely worth it. And that's true if you're not getting the Omicron, right? The Zeta itself doesn't do very much. It doesn't move the needle. It doesn't change the battle at all. However, if you're going to get that Omicron, and I personally, as a time saver, do recommend it, especially only being 10 Zeta material, 10 Omicron materials, you're going to have to bite the bullet on that one. A couple of things to notice here. The Temu Jedi squad, right? That Luminara Undali squad, it really only needs one Zeta. Okay, so Luminara Undali is the only character that you really need a Zeta for. Qui-Gon's is not going to be applicable. Grandmaster Yoda's first Zeta is not going to be applicable. His second Zeta, it's actively harming the squad, and I actually didn't know this. I didn't even realize this until today, and this has to do with my interactions with the raid server and with Belloc kind of pointing it out to me. The Jedi squads really rely on counterattacks and really hard hits, so anytime they're massively getting foresight, it's actively a detriment to the team. Okay, so battle meditation, if you don't have it and you're only using him for the raid, you don't need it. The one problem with that, however, is that the Zeta itself is actually really good in other aspects of the game. And you're going to see the same thing, a similar thing with Mace Windu's Sense Weakness, right? Great Zeta, really, really helpful. However, in the raid, because it gives all Galactic Republic Jedi foresight, it's going to cost the team points. So again, going back to my original point, that Temu Jedi squad with Luminara and Undali, it doesn't really have a heavy Zeta investment, okay? Just hers, literally one Zeta is going to get you a very workable squad. In the same vein, if you're more on that Sith Separatist squad, that B2 Zeta team doesn't really have too many Zetas that are super, super important. I would argue Darth Sidious's being highly encouraged is almost borderline mandatory to make that team work. But other than that, everything else is negligible. Okay, so what this means is that for earlier games players, you don't have to worry about throwing tons of Zetas on your team. With all of that said, I did promise that this was going to be a relatively short video. I could draw this out and look at every Zeta and pull them up on the screen. That's not the purpose here. I just want to get the video out. I want to get the information out. I want you guys to have a resource to look at to make those informed decisions. That final reminder that I'm going to give you before we sign off is that when something is listed as a decent utility or as a luxury, it doesn't mean that that Zeta isn't good. It just means that you can do without it. Maybe you're not going to get a max score. Okay, you can do without it. Maybe you want to get it in 2 to 3 weeks. Hopefully this helps everybody. Once again, this sheet will be available to you. It'll be in our show notes. It's in the show notes from the last video that we did. You will see it listed as a Zeta tab right towards the beginning. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you disagree. With that said, peace out.